Hey, this is Justin Pearson.
This is Luke Hinshaw.
And this is episode 11 of the Cult and Culture podcast. This episode features Jason Hamacher, who is known for a bunch of things. I met him through his bands, Frodus and then Regents and I don't know, a bunch of other things. He played in Battery, Straight Edge Band, and just various different things. I don't even know where to start with this one, man, because he kind of, I mean, so he's been working with the Smithsonian and like doing these field recordings, and he went to Syria and recorded like the oldest Christian chant that exists from the year 60, which is insane to me to even try to comprehend that amount of time.
This whole podcast is pretty much a wild ride.
Yeah.
So be prepared to go from left field to right field, and then all of a sudden you're back home after a while.
So it's weird because I thought, like, when I first met him, and I remember being on tour with, I guess it was, I don't know what band he was on tour with, but maybe Frodus and the Locust played together, and I remember like thinking like, man, this guy's so awesome, but he's Christian, and I kept thinking like he's gonna be offended by like everything I say, and I would cuss, and I think we had these Locust stickers that said anything Jesus does I can do better, and I was like, man, he's just gonna be like, we're just not gonna
so
like
bummed.
be, and I like didn't want to offend him, and I remember like kind of joking with him, being like, like, because he would say like, he would say words, I don't know, like not fuck, he wouldn't say fuck, and I thought that was so weird to me, like. And so I thought, oh, sorry, I cussed around you, and then I realized, like, man, this guy's a total badass, jokes, like, nonstop, pranks people, like, all this stuff, and, like, keeps it cool. And he's like, if Christians could take a cue from this guy, like, I don't think Christianity would be so bad.
Totally. I think, like, his religious side seemed very personal to him, because he didn't really want to, like, elaborate as much as far as, like, because how we were talking about how you and I, we're going to kind of just set him up to kind of maybe debate Christianity based upon my views and anti-religion, anti-Christianity, and all religions.
Your complete hate,
hatred for all of that crap. But it didn't go there, and I'm glad it didn't, because he's a very good guy, and I didn't want to like,
Well, like, one, he's educated beyond
super educated.
I don't know. I think most Christians, and he's like in his like affiliation with like religion is man, it's like just it's so in depth, and also he's a very progressive human being, and that's and so I think that says a lot in itself too, because people try to hold on to these like weird social, regulations that like religion kind of puts on people, and like when I think of Christianity, I think it's homophobic, it's sexist, and I mean that guy is not those things, and so it's a trip to like kind of consider that, and I don't know. There's a handful of like people that identify as Christians that I'm friends with that I think are, one, I think that they're awesome, and two, they're progressive, and three, like they're punk, and even like people that aren't even into punk music, like a friend of mine who's a gay minister, and he doesn't like the kind of music I play, except he was come and seen my bands play and just thought like the dudes in the bands are hot or whatever, like, and that's kind of rad in itself, but what I'm saying, like, so it's like, it's cool, like I really like that, like that in itself is challenging, like
totally. I think if Jason wasn't a Christian, I think he would still be the same person he is right now.
I agree. He'd just cuss and stuff, I guess.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. You cuss.
He definitely knows how to play jokes and prank people. I mean, that seems like most of that guy's subconscious agenda. He's always like up to something crazy, and that's just, I think, awesome in itself. But anyhow, it's really nice that he was able to make it down to San Diego and record this with us, and I honestly like really love the dude, and he's a great drummer, and he's a great friend, and I'm glad he exists in this world, and I'm psyched that we got to get into a conversation with him.
Totally.
Cool. Well, there's the intro and the rundown of Jason Hamacher in our minds. So here is the episode, and we hope you enjoy it. we ready to do this?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay, I want to get into all that stuff, but let's start it off right. Is everything cool? The levels and everything?
Yep.
Okay.
So starting off right, is that chorus disapproval?
I don't know. I was never a fan of that band, man. I was like into No Means No and stuff. So I don't know if. No, let's start off right. Like, cause I remember. Okay, I want to talk about like it's. I mean, it's even looking at like your Wikipedia. Like, it's like.
Which is weird.
It talks about man cake on there.
I like who like. This is how I found out I had this girl came up to me at work. And she was like, I can't believe you were in a band with someone from OK Go. I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
What band was that?
Frodus.
Oh.
And so, but I didn't even heard of OK Go. And so
who was in that band from Frodus?
The bass player. And the singer, Damien, he put out the first Frodus CD. Like 1994 or 5. And so I was just like, she's like, yeah, I looked it up on Wikipedia. I was like, what are you talking? Like everything I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. This is like 2008. It was a long time ago.
You ever try to edit your own Wikipedia?
Well, yeah, I was like, this is all wrong. Like, what is
I know.
And then you get in trouble.
Yeah, I tried to. I was like, I was not. This says I was in Bastard Noise. I was like, I wish I was in Bastard Noise.
But like, it's confusing. I was like, whoever did this knows some really specific information.
Stuff, yeah, it's weird.
Yeah,
or
like the
who
man
cares?
cake thing and like.
Yeah. It had to have been like a friend or something that.
My theory is like it was maybe Shelby like put some stuff up. I don't know.
You could have other people edit yours easier than you can. I had Jose Palafox edit mine, and I edited his. But he wanted me to put all this stuff that he was like a terrorist, and I was like, I mean, he kind of is, but I was like, dude, this is gonna come back on me for editing your, you know. But I was just like, the stuff I wanted done to mine was simple, but it didn't go through. But so like, it's crazy to think about. Like, I want to get into this stuff with Syria, but like, it's crazy to think about things like. One of my most memorable times was like playing Fun Fest, and it was Retox and Regents, and I had not seen you yet, and your whole band was there, and everyone's like, yeah, he's parking the car or whatever it was, and all of a sudden here you approach, and you're like come up, and you're like, hold this, and you hand me the Youth of the Day cupcake, and you run off, and I'm like holding this Youth of the Day cupcake. Wow, that's pretty rad. Where did Jason go? And then this dude just comes like barreling through the crowd, like screaming, like, where the fuck is he? You know, and like I was like, dude. And everyone's like, oh, there goes Jason. This seems about right.
Yeah, like, I was trying to park, and I nicked, like, the guy opened the door, and I nicked his door, and then he just started chasing me.
Yeah.
He was trying to actually kill me. Like, he, like, tried to ram me in the car, and then I parked, and I started running, and then he just got out of the car and started chasing me. And then I was like, I'm holding this like
Youth of the Day
vegan Youth of the Day cupcake. I don't want to get ruined. And then I ran into the club and then like had to change clothes.
Yeah.
And remember, they kept like circling the block trying to like recognize me.
Well, luckily the show was sold out, so he couldn't go in. I was like, God, finally our bands like can sell out a show to save your ass.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So yeah, it's like there's stuff like that blow my mind, you know, and so like, you know, even like when we were on tour, I think it was like the Locust and Combat Wounded Veteran, and there was like those straight edge guys trying to kill the Locust, and like, you know, I mean, the stuff we've gotten involved in, you know, and then I'm like, oh, they're gonna go meet with these like, I don't even know where to start, you know, and
right.
I want to dive into it, and I want to dive into it like correctly. I'm afraid if I like start saying something, I'll like not start at the right point or say the wrong thing or whatever. But like, and you should explain it. But
One of the things that's difficult about all of this is there's so much information, and then it go like normally with like any kind of tour story or whatever, it's like you got like 2 highlights, and then there's like funny parts, and there's a crazy part, and then like, and then that's it, you know. But like then you rope in this whole other like depth of culture and everything else, and like the explanations are longer. You have to like try to, you know what I mean? Like I understand not knowing where to start.
Okay.
You know?
Especially because, you are a very religious man, and I am not a religious man.
Kind of.
Okay, you're kind of. You are. To me, you're very religious.
Okay.
I remember, like, on tour being like, oh my God, he's Christian. I can't say fuck around him. And then I'm thinking, like, oh, we have those, like, anything Jesus does, I can do better stickers. I'm like, how's this guy my friend? Like, he likes me, I think, you know, like, I mean, I was trying to piss people off like you.
I know.
And I was like,
I'm aware.
Yeah. I was like, okay, he gets it. Why can't all people?
Because I think most of the time, anyone that's usually like anti-religious, we usually agree with like 90% of everything.
Yeah.
You know, like almost everything. And if if anyone's like completely honest, like I would say most people are actually agnostic, especially priests.
Wow.
And like people in the clergy, like they're there to question everything.
Sure.
And there's like this, especially working, like the Syrian Orthodox Church that I work with, they voted on the New Testament. It's crazy. You know, like being like in the land where it was kind of formulated was super heavy and kind of learned through osmosis, I guess. But like,
well, so excuse me for if I say the wrong thing, but like I view like Christianity in Syria, maybe before like the current situation with the Assad regime, like as like kind of like almost like punk, you know, you're like, wow, you're like the outcast or like the underdog, right? And then,
well, kind of. I mean, so
like especially like in context of like stuff like ISIS, where like Christians are being like killed.
I mean, there's the last like several hundred years has been a fairly systematic wave of genocide that kind of rotates through like
against Christians,
but also against like minorities. Like there's like, so a lot of times like almost none of this has to do with belief systems whatsoever. It's like identity. Like we're Christian because we've been Christian since 60, you know, 60 AD. Yeah, like this is, you know, and so it's more of along the lines of the identity of who they are, and that becomes like the standard bearer.
Sure,
you know, just like if someone asks what kind of music you play, what do you say?
Annoying.
Is that it?
That's usually what I say.
Some like standard person.
Yeah. I'll
like
say annoying.
Like I just play annoying.
Yeah, because when I say punk, they're like, oh, Green Day.
Exactly.
You know.
So, but my point to all of that is same thing. Like, it's like few people will say annoying. Most people will say like rock.
Okay.
Or I mean like a rock band.
Yeah, hard rock or something. Yeah.
And it's like it's a way for people to like kind of identify with themselves without having to really explain it.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Sure, yeah, that makes sense.
And so the identity is really strong related to the faith, but like a lot of this is kind of my takeaway from it. It's a huge cultural impact as opposed to like a spiritual impact. People identify with their culture as opposed like their beliefs.
Okay.
And then, you know, that gets diluted. You come to the United States, and then it's kind of like it's not even close to even being the same. They brought up last night, which is really interesting. They associate their story.
Who's they?
The Syrian Orthodox Church.
Okay.
This community in Burbank, California.
The only option I found is Rock Community Church and
How is that even working?
I don't know. Technology.
Siri?
Oh, maybe because Syria. Or Syrian.
Oh.
Yeah.
Would you like to hear?
And Steve Jobs is Syrian.
Yeah.
Steve?
A little plug for the podcast.
Right. Hey, Apple.
Oops.
Excuse me. But so he kind of came up with the analogy of the Christians in not just Syria, but that whole area, Iraq, Lebanon, Turkey, they kind of feel it's the same as the Native Americans in the United States.
Okay.
Like I was like, that's an ingenious. It's almost the exact same.
Sure.
You know.
Wow. Okay.
And so when everyone's dealing with the Native Americans, like the faith component's got almost nothing to do.
And it's almost not structured like in the Western world, like how Christianity is here. Like organized religion is like political and just.
I mean, it can get super. I mean, that's the thing. Like, yeah, it can get super political.
It is political, but it's more like more of an ethical thing, right? Is that right? Or like a cultural thing than a.
Yeah.
I don't know what the right word would be.
Like, the one word that gets used all the time that I don't have any affinity towards is tribalism. And it's kind of like this tribe has been Christian believers since 60, and it's kind of like
just the number 60 seems insane.
Yeah, totally. 60,
So can you take us back a little bit to where I want to talk about the recordings. I kind of was like, this is rad, this is cool when you would talk about it, and then it was kind of like I remember driving and hearing you on, was it Terry Gross that interviewed you on NPR, and I was like, that's Jason on NPR, like this is wild. And then I was like, okay, this is like a huge deal. I mean, I knew you were gonna be on it, but it was like hearing your voice come out of my car speaker was like that was it. I was like, wow, all right, this is like a huge thing.
It was, that was the first public interview I did on all of this, like the biggest possible radio interview you could do, and I had no clue what that would mean. Like, they were kind of explaining, like, oh yeah, on average, like 30 million people listen to this show.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, like, I don't even know, like, do they? Like, how do you do these metrics? But so in 2014. I decided to, and let me back up because this will make it kind of, let me start with what happened. In 2005, Decahedron, the band, like Frodus breaks up and reform with Joe Lally from Fugazi. And that band was called Decahedron. Joe and his wife moved to Italy to take care of in-laws. We kind of get another bass player, do that a little bit, that implodes, and then the next day we broke up the night before tour.
And that's good.
Like, I was like, I'm out, this sucks, like, like, let's just, we don't need to force anything, and I'm kind of over it. And so I went to a dinner party, and my friends, Bill from the band Discount, we were like, let's try to do something different. Let's do like a rock orchestra. This is the concept. I even talked to you about it, where it was like approach songs symphonically, where we get like a section of bass players, a section of guitars, a bunch of drummers, and then come up with some sort of music for some vocal tradition that was normally or historically sung a cappella. And so at the end of this meeting, or this, hangout, we kind of tasked each other to go find some piece of music on the internet, and then we'll start coming, like, concepting, like, what we would actually do. And so I was in DC, and Bill called me. He's like, dude, I found these amazing chants from Serbia. And I totally misunderstood him and thought he said Syria.
Okay.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And so I was like, dude, it's like, man, I was so close to going to Syria and I never got to go. He's like, I said Serbia. I was like, I know, man. Like, I was like, remember, because I was on tour with International Noise Conspiracy, and I was like on the border, and I was going to go down, and I couldn't pull it off. I couldn't get into Syria. And Bill was like, I said Serbia. And I just kept misunderstanding him, and then I dropped the phone call. And then, like, in 2001, I went to Israel with Good Clean Fun, and I had bought a book in the airport called From the Holy Mountain by William Dalrymple, just because it looked cool. I had no intention of reading it. Like, I was actually, from a design standpoint, I bought it because I thought somehow I could incorporate. It was like kind of gilded with, I don't know, it looked cool. I ended up reading that book years later, and it described this ancient Christian chanting. And then I went and opened up the book, and I was like, oh my God, like, this dude describes this chant. We got to jam to that. Like, let me try to get a hold of this guy. So then I emailed the author.
In Syria.
Yeah.
So the Serbia thing was something totally different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, totally. I mean, and Serbian chant's really beautiful.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But so I ended up just kind of going down the rabbit hole and, like, just kept chasing it. And, you know, I'm ADD, and
so the band, the orchestra thing never even happened, did it?
no.
Yeah.
Because so what happens is I ended up being on the phone with the Archbishop of the Eastern United States, and he said, we don't have the music you're looking for. I've got something similar, but not what you're looking for. And I was like, well, how do I find that? He's like, well, we just don't have a recording of it. And I was like, well, I'll, whatever it takes. Like, I'll get it, I'll pay to import it or whatever. He's like, no, we don't have a recording to show you. And I was like, you mean we with a capital W? Like, no one's got this? He was like, well, I was like, 1,800 years, you don't have a recording to show the public? I was like, do you want me to make one? He's like, do you know how? I was like, yeah, I can, yes.
Yeah.
He's like, well, come up to New York. He was like, actually in New Jersey. He's like, come up to New Jersey and let's talk about it. And that's when, like, the whole orchestra thing went out the window. And then it kind of totally morphed into chant preservation. And so, I ended up going to Syria a lot for a bunch of different organizations over the years. And I finally, I made those recordings. I ended up getting into some trouble with the military at one point. So I'd always have my recording gear. So then I started to record places that I would walk by every day. So I had this huge collection.
What was the trouble you got in with the military?
I got arrested and was accused of being a CIA operative.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a whole nother can of worms.
Which is crazy because you could have went to prison for...
Dude, I actually met someone that used to work for the Syrian embassy, and they were drinking. And he was like, do you know how close you were to being in serious trouble when you were there?
Yeah.
I was like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
And he said what happens a lot, and this is why people are like, oh, they go into jail and they disappear. And this is something you never think about. They changed the names of the prisoners on entry. So, like, you get checked in as Jason, and they change my name. So that if someone's trying to find me or find someone, like, the guards are telling the truth. We don't have someone here by that name. Yeah. And so you get lost in their system. It's crazy. Yeah. I was like, well, I'm glad that didn't happen. Yeah. And so I started putting out these recordings in 2014. And the first one was a Sufi group I recorded in a 500-year-old house in the old city of Aleppo. And that album, I wasn't sure if anyone would care, honestly. I was like, this is super, niche Syrian chanting from Aleppo. And I wasn't really sure, and I was completely wrong. Like, I released it on LP for Record Store Day, and it sold out in 45 minutes.
Yeah, what label, though?
I just started my own, but I did it with electric cowbell. It's classic, like, classic DC, where, I'm really good with, like, remembering dates. It was October of 2013, and I was like, I think I should do something. I haven't released a record on my own since the first Frodus 7-inch. So I called Discord as just like a, hey, I need help with this. And then Discord was like, hey, there's actually a guy in Arlington that puts out world music and always sells out his stuff on Record Store Day. I was like, that's so random. I was like, well, can you introduce us? And we get an intro together, and I go to meet him in a coffee shop, and I'm just expecting, like, a hippie. Like, some dude who's, like, in his 60s or his 70s that's just, whatever. And we're sitting there, and this guy's name is Jim Thompson. And we're sitting down, we're talking, and I was like, so how do you know Ian and the whole Discord scene? He's like, oh, I know him from back in the day. I was like, which day? Minor Threat, Embrace, or Fugazi? He's like, oh, Fugazi. He's like, I did a handful of early Fugazi shows in Richmond. I was like, oh, really? I was like, are you a musician? He's like, yeah, I play drums. I was like, dude, I play drums. And I was like, what was the name of your band? He's like, Guar.
What? Whoa.
Yeah, he's the original drummer for Guar.
And so that's who put out the record.
Yeah, we became like label partners, and then like you can't make it up. Yeah. And so
was he aware of like the severity of like what you were, or like the like what you were?
He was like, oh, this dude's got like an authentic Sufi recording from Syria. Like we should sit down. Okay. And then like Jim, once Guar became more metal, like he left. And then he was in the alternatives on Black Flag's label. What the hell is that label? SST. Like bunch of stuff, but became like really involved in, like, we call it like outlier music, like which you're aware of. Yeah. Like, and so now Jim books like this incredible music from all over the world, brings it to DC, brings it to New York, and is like heavily involved in music from everywhere. And yeah, it's super rad. And
so would he be able to bring over the people that you did? Have you ever done that?
Well, that was part of some of the ideas here in California. Like the guys I recorded were just like one guy was an elder and the other guys they can't come here. Like from a United States visa standpoint.
Oh, now they definitely
cannot.
Can. Yeah,
like it's almost impossible. To get into this country. And so I've been trying to kind of figure out how to pull something together in the United States, but I haven't. My head's not there yet. Like I've got too much stuff I'm trying to sort.
Okay.
You know. That's how it started, and that's how I got on Terry Gross. So I hired Jim introduced me to like all these world music people, and I hired a PR firm. You know, like a world music PR firm called Rock Scissors Paper that were great. And they, pitched it to everybody, and the head producer for Fresh Air was like, "Oh, this is interesting," and then they called me and they're like, "Fresh Air really is interested in doing this." Like, I was like, "Okay," like not really computing what that means.
Yeah,
and then, and then. They agreed to do it, and I was like, dude, I need to get myself together for this. So I did a bunch of podcasts all in the same weekend, like in New York and all over to talk a bunch about it. And I not demanded, but I was like, hey, I'd like to do it in person. They're like, oh, Terry Gross doesn't normally interview in person. I was like, I'm literally coming to Philadelphia. I'm staying with Drew. I was like, I'm going to stay with the guitarist in my band, who I think is a mile from your studio. And she was like, they were like, well, she's going to be looking at notes and all of this. And I was like, well.
So most of those interviews aren't done in person, huh?
No, they're like, call in. And this is where, this is the moment where it hit me. And I was like, okay, this is super intense.
Yeah.
They were like, well, if you're actually going to be in Philly, then it makes sense. He's like, but it's going to depend on Hillary Clinton. And I was just like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And they were like, she's interviewing Hillary the day before, because this is when Hillary Clinton's book came out.
Yeah.
She was like, she's interviewing Hillary Clinton the day before, and if she can get through all of the Hillary Clinton research, then she has to research you, and be prepared for your interview. And I was just like, what? I didn't think about it, And she was like, yeah, she can't just go in there. She's like, our production team will have a bunch of stuff together for her, and then if she thinks that she can do it, and Hillary Clinton, then yeah, let's do it. I was like, okay.
Yeah. So she pulled it off. Obviously.
Yeah, and then we went in, and dude, it was it's for the exact reason I love to do stuff in person. We were slotted to have a 45-minute conversation. It was 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
2.5 hours.
Yeah, that's great.
She was like, is that an eagle on your arm? I was like, no, it's actually an angel. I was like, it's actually from a 16th century woodcut expert, Albert Durr. She's like, oh, that's Durr? and then started going over,
yeah.
Well, what are all these other tattoos?
Yeah.
kind of.
Oh, Frodus, I got that first 7-inch.
I had this whole bit. I got too nervous. I wanted to see if she would do a morning show routine with me. Is too.
God, all your goofy stuff. You're that's the. Yeah. You're gonna go and just screw with that. You're you're meeting with Terry Gross after Hillary Clinton, and you're just I'm gonna do a joke thing now. Let's talk about.
Let's talk about the weather. Let's talk about the drive. Yeah. So that's that's a lot, but that's a very short thing of how it all started and how it became way more public. And because of that is called Nawa. That Nawa record was on the Billboard charts.
Wow.
It didn't, the world music charts, it didn't sell thousands and thousands, but at least it almost covered the price.
Yeah. So who do you think mainly bought it?
All kind, across the board.
Uh-huh.
To
me, it looked like a cool
metal record, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think maybe Godspeed or something kind of had a scary vibe to it.
Well, that was kind of so all of the Ryan Fredrickson from These Arms Are Snakes and 9 Iron Spitfire. He designs all that stuff for me. And so part of it was the artistic direction of all those records are extremely important to me. So it was like, I designed those records for the 19-year-old touring version of Jason Hamacher. Like digging through record bins or what is this?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Like the cover of that record was actually a photograph my friend took in Syria with a bunch of whirling dervishes, and then we just reversed it. And like that specifically, there was such like it came out with the rise of ISIS, and there was such a huge anti-Islamic wave going through the United States. I thought it would be really amazing to have this kind of ominous looking cover, and then have every chant or prayer be about love, essentially.
Wow.
That it was a kind of strong artistic statement on the misunderstanding of an entire swath of the world.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm dying to jump ahead though to like right now though, because I mean you're in DC and you were saying how you like get invited to go to these like crazy meetings and like meetups with politicians and stuff. I mean, I don't know.
It's usually more like ambassadors.
Okay.
But I mean, so now, like, I've struggled with this a lot, and I've listened to struggle a lot.
Come on, man.
No,
I was 15. I didn't even name that band. Anyhow,
it's a good band.
Let's move on.
No, but so seriously, it's like, what is the point? Like, what is my point in all this? Like, it's not like I'm trying to find a meaning to everything, but it's like, I have a massive amount of experience in music and, photography, all this stuff. Like, what do you do with it? Like, how do I refuse to capitalize off of it. Like, I don't want to make money off of any of this stuff, but what do I do to kind of further the conversation or retail the conversation? And so my entire photo archive I donated to the Library of Congress, and so they manage my entire image collection, and then the recordings are with me and then with the Smithsonian. And so, but all of this is so for future generations it's available and it's not locked away in some university. But now I do a lot of public speaking on this too. Like, I get up with a record player and talk. I did it at the United Nations in Geneva.
Whoa.
I put a record player on the desk of the secretary and the chairman of the United Nations and side mic'd it. And
do you at least get sponsored by the turntable company? Or?
I should. I haven't reached out yet, but like I want someone to like make me a special little thing that like this vision I have is like a great record player that has speakers that swing open, and I can kind of like have this portable little thing. But I haven't needed to do it for a while. So I haven't gotten it yet.
Do they make stuff like that? They probably do.
I'm sure they do. I know a few people that design turntables.
Like they're like in the 80s there was like this like boom box that like had
Andy might have one. I know he has one. It might be downstairs. Yeah, it's a boom box, and then you put the
the record comes out
vertical, right?
Yeah.
Or, right?
No. It's horizontal.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
But so kind of where I've kind of found myself mentally, like the metaphor I use is, it's really difficult to go to a hospital and see someone super sick or see someone dying, or it's really difficult
like for you emotionally, not like
or both. Okay. I mean, it could be both. Like just witnessing the deterioration of anybody or something that has affected you is difficult, and so it takes leaving that hospital or leaving that closed casket funeral, and someone sending you some photo of grandma dancing on a table when she was 30. You're like, oh, my grandmother's actually like used to be really cute and fun. Look, she's dancing on a table.
Yeah.
And so my collection of images and archives kind of serves as that purpose. Perfect example is we were with the group of people in Burbank yesterday, and we started talking about their neighborhood, and I knew like where everyone would go and eat these sandwiches super late night. This guy named Abu Jacques. They were like, you know Abu Jacques? Oh my God! You know, like it's like these like deep cut cultural places that I went out of my way to photograph. Kind of provides that.
Wow. So they're just I mean, it seems so small. You know, the sandwich shop, like that's pretty insane.
But it's like the sandwich shop.
Okay.
You know.
So it'd be like the Pokies of San Diego.
Right. Or like the Discord house.
Okay, sure.
It's like hyper specific to a group of people.
Yeah.
You know,
okay.
If that got removed, someone came through and like bombed it.
Yeah.
You know, and like, you know, all the people died in the fire, and then like, you know, then you've got like this big photo collection of every square inch of the house. You know.
Yeah.
So like, and so people have been the last like 5-6 years. That's kind of where I've been, like producing all these things, and then, you know, getting asked to speak every once in a while, and then so now, the whole reason I went to Syria is this record with Smithsonian Folkways, and this trip to California is the last piece before we can put it into production.
And explain it. It's going to be a box set.
So it's essentially, they've got two different types of releases. They've got archival releases where they were like, okay, this is historically important. We'll take everything, digitize it, and just it's available through the Smithsonian forever.
Digital, like it seems weird that they would like go for vinyl, right? It's like,
well, historically, they have like this amazing. We never went in DC.
I don't know.
Well, next time you come, we'll go. Like, they have this insane vinyl archive, with just like records and records and records, like everywhere. And so, with more people buying LPs in the last like 5, 6, 8 years, they've started to release more stuff on LP. And like every record that I like, all the recordings that I do, like I mandatory put it out on LP, just as like part of it. It's like metaphor of if someone's slightly interested in any of this, you have to literally take hold of it and open it. That's why everything's a gatefold.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, and so with this one, it's the biggest one. The way we kind of figured out, it's like 2 records, either 10 inches or 7 inches. And then there's going to be a book, like the size of your book, like a
novel set, yeah.
Yeah. But a little bit bigger. That'll be like an art book with my photos, these community photos that I've gone all over scanning, my essay, like an essay from a couple of scholars, like basically the history of this tradition. And then this priest in Burbank in 1997 published a cookbook of this hyper-specific cuisine from a neighborhood, and he gave me permission to republish it.
Whoa.
So we're going to republish that cookbook
as part of the record?
As part of the box set.
Wow.
So it'll be, like, you open it up like a big old 2-piece, so it's like book, record. And then simultaneously, my, like, coffee table, big art book on the city of Aleppo will come out. They won't be together, but they'll like designed so
so it's not like a religious record necessarily, it's a cultural record.
By nature, like it's the first Christian city, but it's more about the culture of this community, dealing with the culture. And I mean, so one of the things that we were trying to figure out is, and we're talking about these scholars, like who is going to write the scholarly piece to accompany my personal essay.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's been 2 or 3 scholars that like write something, but like I'm an editor too. Like I edit these people who like have a career of like PhDs and they run schools. And so it's like, just so you know, like I'll kind of edit what we're doing and then we'll submit it to the Smithsonian and they'll edit too. And 3 people have backed out because they didn't like the process. And most of it was ego based.
Whoa.
And so instead of finding some outside scholar, they were like, we should just get, it's like, if this priest is one of the 4 people on the planet, we should have him do it. And so we should get an ethnomusicologist to come interview him. And I was like, I love the idea, but now we've got like another person to have to figure out scheduling with. I was like, I don't want to fly some other person. So just like 4 weeks ago, I cold called UCLA. I just the department. I was like, hey, they like UCLA has the world's largest ethnomusicology doctorate program, and I was like, hey, my name is Jason Hamacher. I'm with Smithsonian Folkways. I need an ethnomusicologist. I'm doing this project. And I just left a message with the department chair. Didn't really expect anything of it. And then I called the department's manager, like this woman that kind of schedules everything or runs the show for whoever's in charge. And she was like, "Oh, this is interesting. I'm sure we could get like a grad student to help you." And I was like, "I appreciate that, but I'm actually trying to find like staff. Like this would be like it would be filmed. It's for the Smithsonian Institute. It's like a whole thing." And she was like, "What's the project again?" And I was like, "It's ancient Christian chanting from Aleppo, Syria." She's like, "Well, this is fascinating." She's like, "Did you talk to our chair?" I was like, "I left him a message." She's like, "His specialty is the ancient Jewish chanting of Aleppo."
Whoa.
And I was like, "What? Are you serious?" And so, that was a huge component of my time too, was like photographing on these Jewish properties.
So what happened then? We
did the interview on Tuesday night. Like we went and met,
that was the person that she was talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the guy, like, the origins of all these faiths intersect the origins of all these musical traditions too.
Wow.
So the professor was kind of not nervous, but he was like, "I don't know if I'm the right guy for this. I don't know anything about this." I was like, "But you're an expert on the Jewish tradition, and I guarantee they have to be super similar." And then they were. And so it was like this big epiphany. And I go to his house on Saturday to discuss maybe doing something larger at UCLA about the intersection of the two worlds.
But is there conflict with those two religious?
No.
It seems like there would be, right? Or am I just...
No, I mean, that's like for centuries, all three faiths lived in harmony all over the Middle East, It's like kind of the last...
But there's conflict now.
Yeah, but it's the narrative is super interesting. Like a lot of, and I'm not an expert on any of this, but like the Syrian Christian belief that I've heard a lot of people talk about is how the civil war in Syria was started by all these people, all these other people. There were like 85 different nation states that came into Syria and were fighting. Like there's a million things about how it started and everything else. And out of not ignorance, but like I choose to not get involved in that conversation because it's so nuanced. And there's no real right answer. Like at this policy discussion, the answer was, "So what do we do?" And like all the experts were like,
Wow.
Like all of them, like there needs to be rebuilding, like reconstruction needs to happen, but there's like all these political roadblocks to allow reconstruction of Syria and like, so all of that I know is 100% out of my depth, or like I wouldn't even be able to participate. And so I try to focus on not the cultural aspects of like yesteryear, but like kind of refocusing the public, not the policy people, but kind of the public's misconception of what Syria is.
Okay, so I see like your focus is on like say like these ancient chants or the projects that you're involved in, but how can you not go like, well, there's a proxy war happening right now, and like there's like how Russia is I guess backing Assad, so like I don't know, like it just seems like there's so much insane stuff happening.
There is there is a proxy war, but like I'm like this with all politics. Like everyone will say something and like something actually is happening. And like I've been involved with two hyper specific instances where I was at an event seeing like a bunch of like pretty renowned people speaking, and I will keep everyone kind of anonymous on this, but everything that was being said from the stage was pretty inaccurate because they didn't realize they were talking about some of the stuff that I personally did, and they just didn't know that I was the one that did it.
Whoa. And
so it was really, I've never been in that position in my life where I was like, okay, like this is exactly why I don't participate. Things get skewed. Things get like everyone, and it's the same thing with religion, like people take experiences or facts or whatever skew them towards whatever the argument is, and then that becomes an interpretation of what's happening in reality.
Sure. Also, too, like taking something like, you know, you were saying like, what were you talking about? How you're like, we have more, like, there's more in common. Like, we talking? I don't know. You made this
with the a couple seconds ago.
That, but I think maybe before we were talking about it too, because I always struggle with this, like with any kind of conflict, even something simple, like where you're, you know, like there's, I don't know, like an argument, you know, but like I guarantee you, like those two people probably have more, you know, something.
I was talking about like I have more. I usually
Christianity.
I have more in common with atheists than most. Than the majority of conservative Christians.
Okay.
You know, but even it's like the thinking, because like you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
You know, and like if you actually sit down and think, like that will lead to questions.
So where the conflict arises, it's like, and if it's heated, you know, it's like, or you know, it's like just shit talking and no one's listening to anyone else. So yeah, I get that. Because I mean, now too, it's like, I mean, I guess with the current administration in America, it's like it just seems like even more insane. Like we, you know, it's like we're like communicating through Twitter now, you know, about like the world, like the world's existence, you know, like the survival of the planet, you know, like even with like climate change and stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just, it's crazy.
So like my approach to all of this is to come up with ideas, concepts, art endeavors that don't blatantly come out and do something, like say something, but like isn't public enough to create a stir. And like the last big thing I did was there was a performance at the Kennedy Center, like the big performance space in DC, of a Syrian musician, and then at my art gallery I held like the official reception and debuted a new photo exhibit, stuff I've never published, and it was these big like cityscapes of Aleppo at sundown or at night. Just like a completely different vision than most people ever see, even if you live there, that you don't really think about, like these kind of day-to-day scenes. And it was, you know, it was great. Like the reception was incredible. Like hundreds and hundreds of people came. The Washington Post did a great write-up on it. There's like international news footage came, and they did like a 2-minute piece, and that ended up going viral in the Middle East.
Wow.
And so it was like these like little artistic endeavors I've come to learn over time can be pretty powerful
and they're showcasing like humanity and,
exactly,
yeah, which I mean, we politicians are just like, oh, the Syrian, like, I mean, most Americans like don't equate that to human life, you know, like
like
whatever.
It comes down to like rubble or refugees. That's kind of like the topic.
Yeah,
you know.
Wow.
And
I mean, we see it in San Diego with the refugees in Tijuana. You know, people just like the reaction that a lot of the refugees are getting, even the rhetoric. I mean, when you look at like Fox News or something outside of like this actual part of the, you know, where something's happening, it's spun a completely different way, you know.
Right.
You know, with the rhetoric like rapists and this and that. And, you're like, come on, man, this is like, these are like women and children, like.
Right.
But that's another thing too. Like people like, I mean, with the Assad regime, like people don't really put any thought to it. Like, yeah, he's like killing people with like poisonous, you know, or what was it, like
sarin gas?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
There's all kind. I mean, there's for everything that's been in the news here. There's also a ton of stuff that's in the news everywhere else on the planet.
Yeah,
you know, about the same stuff.
Yeah.
So I subscribe to all these different news agencies to kind of see like both sides. Like there's like a Russian news agency that always reports all this stuff. And they were like, Americans pulling out of Syria, leaving everyone to die. You know, like, and
but
so,
that's
like,
what Russia wants, right? I mean, okay. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's fascinating. And for me, it's completely odd to be semi-publicly involved with all of it.
Yeah.
And so that's why I just, like, check out these chants.
Yeah.
Check out these photos, you know?
Again, going, like, showcasing the humanity of this part of the world, you know. Yeah, that's wild. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So how do people get your stuff, or how can they find it? Like I
mean, it's like you can stream it everywhere. Spotify, all those places. Like, you know, Lost Origins has an online web store with.
So if like people listening to this, that would be the way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and it's like. All of this, I've only had 2 things come out, like 2 records. Like everything else, like is in the process of being made.
So the thing you're doing right now is like you said, it's 2 7-inches or 2 10-inches. It's not a lot of material, huh? So like, how much time of music is it?
It's like 45 minutes, give or take.
2 7-inches?
I think it's a 10 or 12.
Like 10, like so essentially, like we went to New York to come up with like what's the packaging for this, and I really liked the 2, but to have it be like 2, we could make it as 2 12-inches at 45.
Oh, okay.
But like that's just too big. Like that's a huge.
Oh yeah, sure.
It's a huge box, and then the head of production was like, "Do you need to put all the chants on record?" I was like, I never even thought about that. I was like, I can just kind of choose a handful, but if it's 2 10-inches, that's more than enough time.
Okay.
2 10-inches at 33.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I could kind of choose like a sample of it and have like 2, because the reality is, most people will stream it. You know, if they're interested in it, they'll get it. They'll get the box set to kind of have like the
archival piece. Yeah, yeah.
And then like stream it on Spotify.
Okay.
You know.
Wow.
And so, I mean, we haven't gone down that road yet. Like, a lot of that hinges on this, like, all the stuff we found. This priest in Burbank recorded every chant in a series of tapes. It's like 9 hours worth of stuff.
Every chant.
Every chant. There's like hundreds and hundreds of chants.
Wow.
He recorded every single one of them. It's in... The collection is called the Beth Gaza. It's like the ancient book, like, collection of prayers and all this stuff, and he meticulously took him 3 years, recorded every single one of them. So now I was like, well, we should do something with that too.
Yeah.
Like we haven't, you know, I've been here, but one of the ideas is to either have the Library of Congress or the Smithsonian digitize the entire collection, and it would link to the album and all that kind of stuff. But you know, like everything's an idea until it actually happens.
Yeah, of course. And you seem to have a lot of those ideas.
right. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I remember like kind of hearing about like, oh, I'm in Syria, or like, I had this art show, and then I'll get a text be like, dude, you want to come out and do this Misfits cover band? And I'm like, no, I can't afford that. How did that come into play? You know. So I do wonder about the things that you.
Well, like now, so I'm like, one of the ideas I've been kind of kicking around is this Syrian musician in New York basically started a nonprofit about like the preservation of Syrian music, and he asked me if I'd do a record for him. Like, he's a violinist, and they, you know, the instrument, the oud.
Oh, like you would release his record,
or at least record it.
Okay.
And so he's come up with an idea of, he has an ensemble to record like a lesser known piece of Arabic music. And so I was like, dude, what, you know, it's like, what if we did it at the Library of Congress?
Wow.
And he was like, is that possible? I was like, probably. Let me see what I can pull off.
Yeah.
And the Library of Congress has a collection of priceless Stradivarius violins that are 400 years old.
Wow.
That are on donation, and they have to be played. So one of the things I was thinking, I was like, I can't think of a bigger middle finger to what's happening in the United States.
Wow.
I have a bunch of Syrians at the Library of Congress played the world's most renowned string instruments for Arabic music that very few people ever know.
Wow.
You know?
And the ironic thing is the middle finger will just go over everyone's head.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But it will be on record and like, but whatever.
Yeah.
But like, they're into it. You know, like I had a big meeting about it like a week or two ago, and we had a big discussion about it. And so now I have to like formalize the concept on paper.
Yeah.
But he's like, this is a great idea.
Yeah. And I wonder, like, the way that you came up with that is like, yeah, I played drums in the back of a pickup truck moving, or, you know, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we come from this world where you're like, anything can happen. Like, I'll play in a bowling alley. I'll play in the Library of Congress. Like, it can happen. Where like most people be like, huh? Like,
well, one of like, in this world that I now kind of find myself in, I keep kind of having to explain my thought process to everyone. So, because everyone's like, well, how are we going to get the funding for that? I was like, I'm not concerned about funding yet. Let's get the idea first. Like, let's not limit ourselves by what you think it's going to cost.
Which I'm trying to like circle back to like your like punk ethics and your punk ideology, which a lot of people unfortunately don't have, you know. So
well, it's just like it's a total, and that's the thing that's great about Jim as well, is, you know, dealing with all these like extremely, like, they're not famous in our country, like extremely famous Syrian musicians and opera singers and everything. Like, don't worry about it, it will be taken care of. Let me get my mental game together.
Yeah.
And then we'll figure it out.
And you're like, by the way, Syrian musician, the dude was in Gwar. That's the most insane thing coming into like one world, you know?
Yeah.
What?
It's I mean, it's wild. I mean, one of the most smallest world thing in 2008, I got hired by this Jewish museum in New York as their photographer and their explorer. And so, like, straight up Indiana Jones. And for real, it was like explorer, you know? And they sent me with a professor to Syria, and the professor was like, when we go, so the deal was this professor is like one of the world experts on Aleppo, but hadn't been since he was like an infant. He's like in his 70s. And then I'm like the young guy that knows how to get everywhere in the city, but doesn't know anything of what I'm looking at. You know? So it's like,
sure.
It's like the learned professor and the young photographer, like, together, you know? And so he was like, we have to make sure we get to this one area called Souk Jumruk. It's like, my wife's family has a lot of property there, and it would be great that I could get my father-in-law some photographs. It's like, sure. He's like, yeah, the Picciotto family were an extremely influential family in Syria. I was like, the what family? He's like, Picciotto. I was like, how do you spell that? I was like, that's weird. I was like, I have a music friend. He's in a huge band. That's his last name.
Who?
Guy.
Oh, yeah. Whoa.
And he was like, oh, that's my nephew. I was like,
what?
I was like, of course. It's like someone you're related to the guitarist of Fugazi.
Wow.
And so he was like, oh, yeah, the Picciotto family, they were huge in the Syrian Jewish community. I was like, Guy is a Syrian Jew? I was like, does he even know? Well, I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Jason.
It's Syria, that word.
And so I couldn't believe it. So, like, here I am. I'm like, so we went and we were there for like 2 months. And we were given like high-level access by the president, by Assad, to go and explore all these Jewish properties. It was the first time since the inception of Israel that we were allowed to like comb through all these ancient synagogues and all of this stuff. And I photographed every square inch of all these ancient sites. And I was in like the ancient hall. And when I mean ancient, it's attributed to King David's general. Like, built like 3,000 something years ago. And then the current state of the building was like 1,600 years old. It was the oldest continuously used building in the city of Aleppo. And so everything was just kind of overwhelming and incredible. And the professor called me. He's like, Jason, I'm in the graveyard, which is behind the synagogue. He's like, I'm in the graveyard, and I just moved a piece of wood, and there's a room off the graveyard. He's like, but it's filled with trash. Like, I'll be there. And so, like, I go, and to get in the graveyard quickly, you get up on the roof, and then you jump off the roof down in this little graveyard that's like the size of this studio. And then there was a board that was leaning up against the wall. He took the board off and looked down, just filled like to the ceiling with trash. So I just
like what kind of trash? Like
just
like
plant debris, just whatever. Like plant debris, like plants, tin cans. Like instead of like taking out the trash, people just throw it in this room.
Wow.
So I went in. It was like pitch dark, and just did a handful of photographs with my like full flash to see what was in there, and then I went back to my hotel room and analyzed it. And in the floor, there's like this big wooden beam. I was like, dude, that's a doorway. Like, there's a doorway in the ground underneath all this trash. And so I asked the museum, I was like, hey, we just found like a room off the synagogue. Are you cool if we try to like see what's in there? Like, go for it. So we cleared all this trash out and found 8 tombs inside this room, and then when I went to like photograph that, we're like, holy crap, okay, this is like in near memory, a lost room of tombs. Then I went to take photos of that and was clearing the soil to sit down on the ground to photograph everything. So I cleared, and there was a stone. I was like, interesting. Pulled the stone out, more really loose dirt, pulled that out. I was like, dude, this is blocking something. Like, this is crazy. And I'm by myself. I'm literally alone. And I just keep taking out, like, soccer ball size boulders, like, stacked, and, like, move it. And then they started going in. I was like, dude, I am uncovering a chamber. Like, this is so crazy. And it kept going, and it got to the point where I felt it was dangerous because I was so far in through this wall. So I started picking stuff up with my legs and doing it. And then it got to the point, this is in darkness, I don't have a flashlight or anything. Like, and I got to the point where my eyes were you can kind of see around. And then I pull one out, and it was just black. I was like, dude, there is a room inside of the room. I pulled another one, straight up Indiana Jones, all cobwebs attached to it, and air shot out of the ground. I was like, holy cow. And then I took my camera and flashed in the room, and there was just like a whole bunch of other tombs and a bunch of pottery. And it was I yelled, I found tombs! And then I felt lame. I was like, just no one can hear me. But like, it was wild. So we cleared all that out, and the oldest tomb in that room was one of Guy's relatives.
Wow.
I was like, of course.
So how old were they? Maybe
these were not crazy old.
No.
I mean, it wasn't like 2,000 years, like 400 or 500 years or something like that. And so like, I came home. I was like, you will not believe the adventure that I've been on. He was like, yeah, we have a big, like...
Oh, to Guy?
Yeah, to Guy. He was like, we have a big family, like, reunion this year. He's like, I think I'm going to go. He's like, I don't know about any of this. And then I was telling the other Fugazi guys, and they were like, well, that makes sense. I was like, how does that make sense? And they were like, everywhere we would go on the planet, Guy would have some relative that's like a diplomat or someone that would show up in like the recesses of the planet. Like, it would make, like, doesn't surprise us at all that he comes from some influential Syrian family. Like, I found Torah scrolls that were hundreds of years old with this family name on it that they donated to the community. I mean, it's just crazy, And so, like, everywhere I go, literally everywhere I've ever been on the planet, it always intersects with punk rock or DC hardcore in some way or another.
Wow. That says a lot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, that's a good one. I was expecting you when you're telling the story about like a big boulder roll in, like, the Indiana Jones. Yeah.
I have been in something like that. I was in Turkey.
Of course, yeah. Okay, let's hear this one.
So, this whole thing started, I was on tour with International Noise Conspiracy, and they played Coachella, and then we were playing in Greece. Like, and I was just selling shirts or whatever. And so I stayed and flew into deep eastern Turkey and then drove like 4,000 miles over the course of like a week, going to all these ancient sites and all these places. This is how I found out about a lot of this community. And there was a place that was like a salt cave. Like, just like a little thing in the Lonely Planet, like a little text box. And I was like, cool, I'll go check out a salt cave. And then...
A salt or a salt?
Salt, like...
Oh, okay,
like
salt cave.
The mineral.
Yeah, yeah.
It was the cave that verbal assault. No, and so essentially, like, I just parked, and this is like very, very, very remote. Like, I hadn't spoken to anyone for a couple days.
Wow.
Like, there's like just no one around. And so parked my car, walked up this hill, and it was like a big open cave. But it kind of turned up, and there was an opening on the other side that was like open to the sky, and it was just filled with salt. So I could have a bunch of photos of this. So I have my camera on a tripod taking photos, and I just hear rocks falling, and then like I kind of turned the corner, like to kind of try to look up, and you just see dust coming down, like, holy crap, and then ran to the mouth. It was too steep, but you couldn't, like, jump out. There was a straight up rock slide, like, and it came down. It did not smash my camera, but, like, it rained down, knocked my camera over, and, like, it was terrifying.
Yeah, sure.
And I just got in the car and left. Like, I'm out. Like,
yeah, you would have been injured, and, like, that's it. Life is, no one's gonna find you.
Yeah, unless someone finally, like, looks at, like, who's parked here. Like, whose car is here?
Yeah. Wow, that's wild. Let's take a shift to your music. Can we do that?
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of... I mean, I know a lot, and I'm not sure which part we should get into, but, like, let's talk about how you got into punk and how, and, like...
Well...
Like, Frodus wasn't your first band, right?
No.
But it was, like, your first kind of, like...
It was the first band that, like, I got super active with.
Yeah.
Like, I grew up on the beaches in Florida and super into metal. Like, I was, like, on the way here just because I was getting, like, the traffic sucked so bad in the rain. I just threw on Metallica 598 EP. Mm-hmm. And, that's the one where they cover the Misfits.
Yeah.
It's like, that's...
Garage days, right?
Yeah, that's kind of like the genesis for me kind of coming into that world. Like, I was, like, a metal kid.
Yeah.
And then my friend's older sister was dating a skinhead, and he stole a tape from his house or his car. And so we were just listening to it. Like, I was listening to Sepultura, Creator, Metallica, and then this other tape. And we had it was unlabeled. It was just whatever. And it took us, like, several months to find out it was Minor Threat, Dead Kennedys, and the Circle Jerks. And then it was kind of over at that point.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this is what I'm talking about. And then I would go to this record store called Play It Again Records in Melbourne, Florida. And, they sold everything. They sold, like, metal tapes, but they also had a bunch of hardcore and punk stuff. And being the son of a minister, my dad's a Southern Baptist minister, here's Revelation Records. And I was like, oh, sick. This is a Christian label. My parents will probably buy it for me. And then it was the week that the Inside Out 7-inch came out. No Spiritual Surrender.
Oh, wow.
I was like, awesome.
Wait, how old are you?
How old am I?
Yeah.
42. So it's like Revelation 9 or something like that. That's like 89 or 90 or something. And so, my first collection, the first 7-inches I bought were Insight, like that early Victory band, Uniform Choice, Split, like the demo. This is all stuff from like 1990. And then the band Go from New York.
Oh, yeah.
And then how
did that get into the mix?
They just sold everything at this place.
No, but I mean, like, I see, like, there's, like, a, like, kind of hardcore straight edge. And then Go was, like, I remember Go just, because they had that one song, like, this one goes out to you, dreadlock motherfucker, or whatever. I'm like, dude, because they were, like, all gay, right? Or, and I was like, totally. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. Because I remember, like, thinking, like, oh, I guess I can't like Bad Brains now because they're homophobic, And I like Big Boys, and I like all these other bands, But I remember, like, Go kind of seemed like super gnarly.
Yeah, there was a zine from Melbourne, Florida called Outback Fanzine.
Oh yeah.
That's who ran. That was where I lived, and they ran a radio show too. And so him and John White, this guy named was Craig Chapman. John White was the original singer for Brotherhood, and had moved to Central Florida to go to Florida Institute of Technology, which was in Melbourne. So we would find out about, like, hardcore stuff because this dude from Brotherhood was going to school this little podunk Central Florida town.
Yeah.
And so there was, like, a handful of, like, dudes that really knew, and they ran the record store. So it's like, it wasn't just, like, stereotypical stuff either. It was, like, pretty serious deep cuts.
But did you ever, like, I don't know, like, struggle with no pun intended, but, like, try to have the issue with like punk being, like, kind of anti-religion, and then but
it was like, it was more about the music. And again, like, we were young, so it's like, I just grew up in church. It wasn't like this, like, formative, like, I would get.
Your parents didn't care though.
Well, yes and no. Like, my father was about as moderate as you can get. My mother was a little bit more conservative. Like, getting into the Misfits and stuff, I remember being in 6th grade and listening to Legacy of Brutality.
Oh, yeah.
and my mom comes home. It's the first time I ever heard my mom swear. She's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
angel fuck?
Yeah.
I was like, she's like, not in my house.
Yeah.
And then threw the tape. I was I was like, listen to it. It sounds like 50s
Elvis.
music.
Yeah.
You know?
My dad freaked out on that too, and I was like, "That's it. I like it now. If you hate it, like, yeah, Angel Fuck and whatever else." He's like, "Garbage Man," like what? You know, like the Cramps, because I had those 2 tapes.
Right.
But it was Suicidal Tendencies. Then they were like, "What is this?" You know.
Mine was Testament, where they were like, Testament? And so it was. So, I mean, I didn't even like Testament that much.
Yeah.
And the thing that is my favorite, parental karma story is my parents love Trans-Siberian Orchestra, right? The Christmas music. That is the guitarist of Testament.
What do you mean?
He's the guy that started and does Trans-Siberian Orchestra.
Really?
So I took my parents like 18 years ago or something. We
Yeah.
went to a concert, and I was like, "This is a heavy metal Christmas." I was like, "You guys like this?" And I was like, "Who are these guys?" And I tried to look it up. I was like, "Mom, remember the tape you smash in the in the driveway in Florida?
Yeah.
He makes your favorite Christmas music."
Wow, that's real. Then wow, that is really crazy.
Yeah, totally. And then, of course, 4 years ago, he released some world music album, and we had the same publicists. So I actually got to meet him.
Oh yeah,
And I had a photo of me with
it's-
him, and I got to send it to my mom.
that's
Yeah.
great. Okay, so Frodus, and then
So essentially, I started we were in a hardcore band called Headlock
okay.
on the beach of Florida. We sound like Judge.
Uh-huh.
And then I moved to DC, and just I went to a school of 5,000 people. There's one other kid that liked the music I listened to, being Born Against, Life's Blood, but also metal. There's one other guy. All the other musicians were more into Dinosaur Jr. I was man, I don't like overalls. I don't like the whole thing. I wasn't into. I don't play guitar.
Yeah.
I didn't like the singing. I didn't like any singing. I didn't like Anthrax. I didn't like Iron Maiden. Screaming only. That is it. And so this is right about the time Born Against had moved to Richmond. And so I was like, dude, I need to be in a band that sounds like this. And then that never happened. And then I met Shelby, and we started Frodus. We started Frodus in 93.
But Frodus seems in the realm of Born Against.
Yeah.
know?
I mean, and of course, we were in 11th grade, and it started off way more jokey or satirical than what it kind of morphed into being. And then, of course, being on tour, that's when he's, everyone always, where we met, and and then you start kind of meeting all these other people, and kind of morphs in from there. I
mean, it morphs to an insane extent. Thinking about the whole thing with Guy blows my mind, or that's
Right.
so wild. Okay, so then what happened? You still play,
Yeah, well, I mean, so Frodus was super active, and then I joined Battery, the straight edge band, and then toured simultaneously with both bands for several years. Then my girlfriend at the time, got sick with cancer and ended up passing away, and I quit everything. And then when Frodus breaks up, it was a really interesting, pivotal moment. Converge lost their drummer, and Dillinger Escape Plan lost their singer. This is right before Patton joined and did the EP with Converge. So
with Dillinger.
Yeah. So Dillinger asked Shelby if he'd want to sing in Dillinger Escape Plan.
Whoa.
And then Converge asked me if I wanted to try out.
Wait, did both of those happen?
We never did it.
Oh.
I was part of it was I was going to cancer treatments with Alana in Boston. And the guys were like, well, do you want to try out? And I was like, dude, I would love to try out. It's but it kind of depends on the health of my girlfriend. I don't really know. And they were like, this is way too heavy.
Yeah.
And they had met her, and she was around and stuff. This is way too heavy. The tin can full of dreams, that was 98, right? When we all met.
Yeah.
I ended up going home early because I hadn't seen her forever, and it was everything just kind of got really heavy really fast. And so I just bowed out of music. I just stopped. I went down to Peru and kind of just left. It was too the music component was too heavy for me to deal with. And then also, you know, all of my friends released like these amazing records. Everyone always like, oh, do you like this? Do you like this? I was like, well, here are the 3 records that I'm going to compare it to. Converge, Dillinger Escape Plan, or Locust. Is it better than any of these 3? The answer is no. Do you know what I mean? But seriously, like, it was a pretty serious standard that I kind of felt like we were a part of.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people were influenced by the chaotic craziness of you guys. The insanity musically of Dillinger Escape Plan. I mean, Botch too. But Botch didn't tour nearly as much as Dillinger, and then Converge is just their own entity.
Yeah,
you know? And so I learned how to enjoy being by myself, which was something that I just toured. That was it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, or like work some lame job.
Yeah.
So it was like kind of being forced to restart myself. Like the worst day of my life was the last Frodus record. We were approached by Sub Pop. This is before, right about the time they were also asking At the Drive-In to be on Sub Pop too. And so it was like, you know, we were kind of in that, like we had left Tooth and Nail in Seattle. We were just like, we don't fit anymore. Like we never really fit to begin with, and they were trying to do like a different direction, and then it was just like clear. We just didn't fit whatsoever. And then people at Sub Pop heard that we left, and we were writing this last record. And so if we were going to, and you know, everyone in Frodus was like tired at this point, you know, like this was right after the Refused tour, where Refused breaks up on tour, and like everything's just kind of like shitty. And so during one week in 1999, at the beginning of the week, Alana gets diagnosed with cancer. 3 days later, Shelby's dad has a stroke, goes half paralyzed while driving, gets in a car accident. And our bass player Nathan was in Scotland. Like he went to school there. He was like visiting, and his girlfriend, he finds out his girlfriend's cheating on him. This is all within 5 days of each other. We're like, God, man, this is just rough. And then we end up like writing our last record, and then everyone was just tired. And so if we wanted to actually tour, like, and it was like a really narrow, it was like Sub Pop / whatever the record label was, like Hollywood Records, whoever bought Sub Pop out, like a major label was involved in some way, had like a very narrow definition of what like a tour cycle was. It was like 2-3 week tours in the United States, and then one in Europe. And I was like, 9 weeks? I was like, we do 12 weeks together.
Yeah,
like it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So like if we were gonna do like a bigger tour, like if we wanted to do that route, we were talking about Sub Pop, and then if not, Slow Dime, what Juan Carrera ended up running from DC, they were kind of like going to be the Discord, the newer Discord. They said they would put out the record. And so I go, and at that point I was working at Furnace Manufacturing, and I just couldn't, I couldn't go to work with my girlfriend dying in a bed, in Maryland. So I had to talk with my parents, just like, I don't think I want to work right now. Like basically, will you help me survive while we deal with Alana's sickness? So that morning, I had that talk with my parents. I go to this Frodus band meeting to discuss Sub Pop versus Slow Dime, and the other guys say that they want the band to break up. And I was like, okay. And then I go home. I'm in the car. I go home to call Alana to tell her what the hell just happened. And that's the first day she felt her sickness. Like, she felt she was dying. I was like, God damn, this is crazy.
So maybe it was like a blessing, I guess.
Yeah, like, and so, like, everything just came down all at once. And that kind of tends how my life tends to be. And I just like, man, this is just nuts. And then she died, and I just left, And then I came back. One of the first shows I went to was Converge at the Auto Bar. And I was like, that's the first musical regret I ever.
Wow.
I was like, shit, this record's incredible.
Yeah.
I was like, Jay Doe was heavy. Yeah. Then the next one was like, early. It was like you guys at NGWK.
Oh yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Like it I don't remember where it was.
9:30.
Yeah. But so it was like all this heaviness, and then we end up kind of redoing it and doing Decahedron and with Joe and all that stuff. But now, fast forward to current, with all of this Syria-related stuff, you know, I opened and run an art gallery now in DC. Like, I'm still a massage therapist. Like,
where did that come into play?
So, when I came home from Peru, I needed a job. So I came home from Peru and went down to Florida, and we are going to do Combat Wounded Veteran full time.
Yeah. And
just no one was ready, and it just didn't make any sense. And I was at...
That was like some of the shows we did with you guys.
Yeah, totally. And so I went to the Misfits, Hot Water Music, Murphy's Law, Dillinger Escape Plan show in Orlando, Florida.
That sounds horrible.
Dude, and this Nazi breaks my foot. This guy's like moshing in the pit and like jumped up, and like I was just kind of on the edge, and he just like smashed my foot and like broke it. I was like, dude, I was like, man, I'm going home. This sucks. Like, and I knew he was a Nazi. He had like a swastika tattoo. And he had like no remorse tattooed across his back. I was like, dude, I'm just going home.
Yeah.
And so I needed a job, and so a friend of mine was like, hey, you should come work at this med spa. And I was like, no. Like, what are you talking about? I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, I would just, no.
Yeah.
Like, you need a job. I was like, it's a med spa. It's like, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
She was like, have you ever been in one? I was like, of course not. Like,
so you're saying no to something you don't even...
Yeah, I mean, it was like, you know, this is when Sex and the City got really popular, and I'm just expecting, like, lace and cucumbers on the... I don't know, you know? I was like, man, I just toured Japan. Like, I'm not going to some spa in the mall.
Uh-huh.
She's like, you need a job, and I will hire you if you come and it makes sense. And so I was like, whatever, fine. So I go, and it's like the total opposite of everything that I think. This is like late October of 2000, and I take the job because it's just weird.
Yeah, and it's almost like sports like injury and stuff, right? Or
no, it's like super high end like skincare.
Oh, okay.
Like most all of it is skincare, and then there was a massage therapist there who was Romanian and had worked in Romanian hospitals for like 20 years before coming to the United States. And I was just like fascinated with all of her stories. And so through a long series of events, like I ended up leaving that company, and then I did that tour with International Noise Conspiracy, and then came home and was like, I need to do something.
Yeah.
And massage school wasn't that expensive back then, and I was like, screw it, I'll just go to massage school.
Yeah.
And then being a drummer, like, naturally lent itself to that whole field.
Sure.
And the way my brain worked really well too.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I still massage therapist.
Yeah.
Like, it's been 17 years.
Wow.
You know?
I mean, some of those stories you tell me were insane about the dudes with boners and stuff like that. I just couldn't.
Yeah, that was definitely, like, questionable. Like, I don't know if this is a good decision.
Wow. Well, I want to dive into one maybe last story and to kind of wrap it up, and it's the story you told me about when you're out with Dillinger and the Dave Mustaine thing that happened. So I think it's like it's one of the best stories. Can you just tell it?
Yes, because it actually involves massage therapy.
I know, that's why.
So,
which is also on your Wikipedia that you went on the, what was the name of it?
Gigantor.
Really? Yeah, that's on your Wikipedia
I don't
too.
even know.
I don't know. It said that you went as a massage therapist for Ben.
Yeah. So essentially, 2005. This is a great like it's the intersection of everything. So this was in like late August or September of 2005. I had just stumbled into all this serious stuff. I had just gone to New Jersey, which is where Ben is from, to meet with the Archbishop. Like, all this stuff happened. And then I was engaged. My wedding was in November of 2005. Ben calls me and just was like, hey, are you licensed? That was it. Yeah. I was like, to drive? I was like, of course. He was like, no, because I was like, I thought he was wanting me to like drive Dillinger Escape.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, well, I can't do like big buses or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, it was a massage therapist. I was like, yes, I'm licensed. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, I just got hit by a truck. Like, he was driving in, like, a delivery truck, like, rammed him, and he tore his rotator cuff and herniated a disc. He's like, we just got asked to do this big festival tour with, like, all these metal bands, and I need a massage therapist to go on tours. Like, would you be up for it?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I need to talk to my fiance about this. It's like, how long is the tour? He's like, it's like 6 weeks. And I was like, would I actually get paid? He's like, we can figure all that out. And I was like, what bands? He's like, Megadeth? I was like, done. Let's do this, dude. I was like, are we actually going to hang with Megadeth? He was like, maybe. And so there were like 2 stages. It was like most shows were like these big, like 2 stages. It was like Megadeth, Dream Theater, Fear Factory, some like power metal band, and then Life of Agony, Dillinger Escape Plan. Some like other bands like bought themselves on tour, and it was a weird scenario. And this is right when Dave Mustaine went sober and actually became Christian.
Yeah,
and I heard about it, and I was like, dude, I'm gonna talk faith with the freaking guy from Megadeth. I was like, this is gonna be so awesome. And
but not like in an awesome like go God way, like kind of like awesome, like we're gonna like you were gonna like kind of mess with them,
well,
right?
I just wanted to be like, dude, like you were in Metallica, and that like I didn't know what to expect. Like I just want like to have like a social interaction, and I figured like we could have like some at least some very basic common ground.
Yeah,
you know, regardless of who actually believes what. Like like hey, I'm with you, whatever.
Yeah,
and so Dillinger Escape Plan was like hyper insane on this tour, and like none of the tour staff could handle it. Like they would have like an empty guitar cabinet that Greg would just like throw into the throw a guitar cabinet.
Yeah,
and like everyone was kind of freaking out, and we were backstage, and Mustaine walked in, and then everyone was just like quiet. I'm like,
this is like early on in the tour.
This is like day 3.
Okay.
It was day 3, and they were already talking about kicking Dillinger Escape Plan off the tour.
Okay.
Like for insurance purposes.
Because like didn't Greg just like chuck like cymbal stands?
Yeah, cymbal stands, like all this. It was kind of chaotic. And this is the first, like, I am not good if I'm not playing on tour. Like my nefarious side really comes.
Yeah.
Like we started a riot. I mean, it was like it was kind of wild. And and so day 2, like Mustaine comes backstage. He's like, look, I've done a lot of crazy stuff, and you guys are okay. No one's gonna get kicked off. And everyone's like, oh, okay, this is awesome. He's like, I'm really excited that you guys are on this tour. Let me know if you need anything. I was like, dude, we need goddamn Polaris every night. I love that song. He just looks at me. He's like, and then just leaves. Does not acknowledge that I said a word. I was like, well, what was that? This sucked.
Yeah.
Fast forward to like week 2, we were at this place called like it's in Milwaukee. It was like most of them were like smaller arenas, but there's like a club that held like 2,000 people, and food service was all at the same time. So it was the only time every band was together. I think it was called like The Rage or something. It used to, like, rumor was that this place was the head of the American Nazi Party in the 1920s or something.
Wow.
There's like all these like weird rumors surrounding the show, and then everyone was in the room together, and the entire backstage is littered with photographs, just like wall-to-wall pictures of people that played there or whatever, and everyone's tables are like round tables, and it's spaghetti. It's just like tour food.
Yeah.
Spaghetti and like white bread, whatever.
Yeah.
And the Dillinger crew were all sitting here, and Mustaine is going around looking at the walls. And, dude, right at the end of our table is Metallica photos from 1991. Classic Hetfield, all in black, you know, like the classic Metallica photos. And this is right when that movie came out, Some Kind of Monster, where everyone, like, where Dave like had a breakdown on film. That came out right before this tour, so everyone kind of knows he's like in this like sensitive state of mind. He gets to the Metallica photo and stops moving, so much so everyone's like, what's happening? And then it got super uncomfortable where everyone had flip phones. The entire backstage, everyone started slowly raising their flip phones to take photos of this. And then, of course, Greg from Dillinger yells, Mustaine's having a breakdown! And everyone just, like, hands in their foot. Like, no one could believe he yelled that.
I thought you yelled it.
No.
Okay.
I was terrified.
Yeah.
No. Greg yells, Mustaine's having a breakdown. And then he was. Like, he had, like, a pastor / maybe, like, a sponsor or something on tour come and put his arm around him and walk him to this balcony. And they just, like, stared off on this balcony for, like, 20, 30 minutes. We were just like, dude, this is absolutely bonkers.
So how much longer till Dillinger got kicked off?
Ben actually hurt his arm, like, substantially. Like, he, like, was on, like, the bass cabinet, like, really high up, and, like, something fell.
Yeah. You think, like, at that point, and you're like, I have to tour with a massage therapist, you just don't jump off of shit.
Well, part of it, and this was actually, I was, like, from a professional standpoint, like, I came up with all sorts of routines. Like, it's rare to work on someone every day, let alone your friend, let alone for hours. So, like, I do, like, 2 hours on Ben almost every day. Like, we just hang out. And then I developed, like, all these, like, really advanced back routines and shoulder routines on this tour. And then I had a little bit of experience with shoulder. Like, Luda from International Noise Conspiracy had terrible scoliosis. And when they were recording with Rick Rubin here, this is in 2002, I came out to just hang out and ended up going to whichever massage place that Rick Rubin suggested. And so it was like this, like, acupuncture place, and they did, like, all this shoulder stuff with me too. And so it was like, between Rick Rubin's massage therapist and then this thing with Ben, like, I developed these highly specific therapies that I still use now.
So Rick Rubin didn't. I would think he would go to, like, a sketchy one. Every time I've seen that guy, he's, like, got, like, really young hot girls with him, and I'm like, like, what's going on here, man?
It was just some, like, Asian place, like, in the hills somewhere.
That's crazy. So they didn't get kicked off for that. I would have expected
that.
Or I would have expected you to do something to get them kicked off.
I mean, there was several times. Like, there was this, I won't use everyone's name. There was this guy that was, like, from the record industry that was just around. He's, like, old school New York. His name, like, he's like, hey. He would always introduce people as, like, the wrong band and stuff, like, on stage. And Chris Penny, the drummer for Dillinger, and I had a thing called Team Bum Out, which was, like, if something lame was happening, he'd be like, dude, Team Bum Out, meet me at this bus. And then we would stand next to each other and just ruin the moment for whatever was happening. And so he was like, dude, this is the best one. Get here. It's this, like, older guy. He's on drugs or whatever was happening. Hammered. Making out with these two girls. He has his, like, pants around his ankles just outside. So Chris and he had his hand up this girl's skirt. Got within 3 inches of him on either side. And I would scream, pants off. And then Chris would yell, against the bus. As it was actually happening.
Wow.
Like, you know, like, call and response. Like, pants off! Like, in his ear.
Yeah.
As he's, like, totally out of it. And it became, like, this, like, war cry on tour. He had no memory of doing it. So we got to the point where we would have, like, thousands of people in the audience yelling, pants off! Against the bus! Pants off! Against the bus! And then have the guy, like, walk out on stage, like, totally clueless of what it would happen.
Yeah.
And then I wrote a blog post about it. And he called and, like, lightly threatened me. And I was like, he probably is connected. I'm going to change everyone's name.
Yeah. Wow, man.
You know?
That's great. Wow. All right. Do you got any other? You have any Danzig stories?
No. Other than I've got an almost 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they don't really like any music that I play. Forever, they just assumed whatever they heard on the radio was me playing. Like, is this you? I was like, no, this is Whitney Houston. Like, I don't sound like this whatsoever. And so maybe like a month ago, I thought it would be funny to just play them parts of songs where everyone's just screaming.
Oh yeah.
So it's like it starts off with Uniform Choice, and then like I would just cut to something else. And then Danzig too. There's a lot of just like him yelling on Danzig too. So we just would like listen to Danzig, like portions of Danzig too, with him yelling.
Oh, Father!
We got to get you a Danzig. I mean, I think it'd be such a great story if you
like
could.
I've never, I don't think I've ever met Danzig.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's like a weird, I assume.
Yeah. Anyhow,
I'm in a new band.
which one?
Zealot. I'm psyched. We're gonna start playing shows really soon.
All right.
It's me and Mike from Darkest Hour.
Oh yeah, of course.
And Blake from Pig Destroyer.
Okay. Wow.
He's like their noise guy. He's singing. It sounds kind of like Entombed meets Slayer meets Jesus Lizard, like super heavy.
That's good.
It's the closest drumming I've ever done to like actually just playing like Slayer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm psyched. Like we have almost a full length of worth of stuff.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's rad. Good. No Regents though.
I mean, everyone moved.
I know.
And then we were supposed to play a festival, and then it's like this, I was like, hey, I can't do it. All of my photos just got accepted in the Library of Congress. They're like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, I have to do like all this like
I heard about that actually.
catalog
From your other bandmates.
They're all bummed.
And I was like, wait, that's kind of a big deal, dude. Like, I don't know. Okay, I get it, but it's just, it's just a hardcore show or fest or whatever.
Right.
Like, yeah.
And it was like, and then like, yeah, there was just like all these things happening. David Neesmith always has some weird idea, right? He was the one that, always did like the weird men's recovery projects.
Yeah.
So maybe 8 days ago, he's like, hey, I've got this idea. Years ago, it's maybe like 10 years ago, we did a band called Music to Our Ears. It's one performance. And the idea is you dress up like something and then all of the sounds are related to it, and that's music to the ears. It's very men's recovery project.
Yeah.
Everyone was dressed up like a clown. It was 2 guitars and an electronic drum set, and everything was like laughing, and then even the drums were like triggered laughs.
Yeah, okay.
Right? And just everyone in the audience was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Like, what is this? And he's like, dude, we gotta do another show. I was like, do we? He's like, but this one's about lawyers.
Oh my God.
And I was like, okay, talk to me. He was like, everything will be related to something with money or lawyers. And so David and the other guy that played guitar have bought these guns that shoot dollar bills. Like,
whoa. Oh yeah. Like the strip club stuff.
Yeah, totally. And so he wants to do another show.
That sounds great.
Another show where everyone dresses up in like suits, but maybe with the Monopoly guy, the Monopoly mask. Yeah. And then so it's kind of like so people really don't know what it is, and then like do another weird show.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
You could do it on Wall Street. All right.
That's what I got.
That's rad. People should go and look. The Regents performance of you playing in the back of that pickup truck is on YouTube, so people should.
Is it?
Yeah, I wasn't there, and I saw it.
You weren't there?
I was there, but not at the performance.
Oh, right.
I just remember
Rob was
I remember seeing you play.
Nero's guys.
Yeah, all these like thug motherfuckers who were sitting around like.
We should tell the story because it was kind of. Because it's like.
It was not good musically though. Like.
No, it was terrible. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the point. So the idea was it was like this thing at South by Southwest, and we played some like bad part of town.
Yeah.
And when I mean bad, like literally, it was like an outdoor venue, and there was an alley, and on the other side of the alley, legitimate drug deals and crack and heroin were being actively used while we play outside.
Yeah.
And so I was like, it will be so hilarious. We just put my drum set in the back of this dude's pickup and did a parade with all these people.
Who was the dude?
This guy, Tommy.
Oh, wasn't one of the drug addicts.
No. But I, of course, roped one of them in. And so we had like a snare drum and a bass drum in his truck.
Yeah.
And then I think Braid played and Narrows played. It's like kind of a pretty great lineup, but like Sleepy Time Trio played a couple songs. And so the idea was, during the last song, I'm just gonna get in the back of this truck and leave, and we'd drive, and I'd be playing the drums around the neighborhood, and then we drive back in, and then it ends with me. It like the whole thing is like it's just kind of lame.
Yeah.
But it's funny because it's so lame, right? And so we tried to do it, and we couldn't get the gate open. Like, it was all slow.
Yeah.
And then the guy that actually filmed it was the guitarist for Braid. He was the one that actually came with. And so the cymbal stand kept, like, falling off. So I grabbed this guy out of the alley and get him in the van, or get him in the back of the truck. So there's this, like, total random guy holding it. I, like, take his hat off, and I put it on my head. And we're, like, doing it or whatever. And then we come through, and it's, you know, it's the point is it's anticlimactic, and it's not that funny, but it's hilarious. And then he was like, the show's over. We can't get through an alley because there's a woman in a wheelchair, like, blocking. It was like just super degenerate, just really weird. We stop, and the guy's like, man, that was like the closest. You made me feel like I was at the Grammys. I was like, I don't know about that, man. Like, this is super weak. We're in a pickup truck. Like, we were at lights most of the time. Like, it was like, it wasn't, you know. And then the performance is over, and everyone's like, kind of like, that was kind of funny. And the guy's like, my man, you owe me money. And I was like, what? He was like, you just cost me dealing time. He was like the drug dealer for the alley.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, you owe me money. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, if you don't pay me, I'm going to take it out of you. This is like in the show. This is now like in the show. We're not in the alley anymore. Yeah. And I look over, like, all the Narrows guys just kind of like, Rob's just kind of like, And then I was like, well, how much? Like, he's like, well, I probably would have sold this much. He's like, I'm not going to charge you for stuff I didn't sell. I'm just going to charge you for my time. I was like, dude, we went around the block. Yeah. And I didn't want to argue with him either because I could tell it would, like, turn quickly. He's like, $45. I was like, I'll give you $20 in a t-shirt. And he was like, you got my size? He's like, I'm guessing you're like a large? He's like, yeah. He's like, done. And that was it. And then the next night, someone got murdered in that alley.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was great. It was awesome.
Yeah. There we go.
There you have it.
Oh, man. That's great. Yeah. You can see that on YouTube.
Oh, dude. I got to check that out. One of my favorite, I've got one more because this loops into this weekend.
Okay.
So so on the Retox tour, remember I got Retox shaved.
Yeah, I do.
Shaved into my chest. And then so it was that's a whole different story. But as a joke, I got Retox shaved perfectly into my chest, and then my car broke down. And that's where the Syrian Orthodox Archbishop was. And he was like, why don't you come out? I was like, hey, I'm stuck in New York. I'll just come out and say hi. And I've known him long enough that I can be super informal. The day before, he was like, hey, I'm hosting a delegation from India. I want you to come and explain to the heads of the Indian church your project. I was like, okay. And I don't have clothes for this. Like, I cannot go in like this.
Yeah.
And so the only shirt any band member could have was this, like, kind of linen shirt. And so I roll in. You can see Retox through the shirt. It was so embarrassing. And so I roll in with, like, the Christian leadership of the country of India. And you can see the shadow of your band's logo on my chest underneath everything. I was just like, oh, man.
For the listeners of this, like, you have a very hairy chest. Enough hair on your chest to shave our logo.
Yeah. And so it was like, as always, like, the joke ends up on me. Yeah. It's like lame. It's funny at first, and then it turns into some, like, lame problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they were, the community in Burbank was like, there's a community in India. I was like, oh, I've met them.
Yeah.
Like, I've hung out with those guys before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's how it all loops together.
All right. So So there you have it, episode 11 of the Cult and Culture podcast. We'd like to say thanks to Jason Hamacher. Thanks to all of you for listening. And I don't know, do us a favor and check out all of our previous podcasts on 31G's SoundCloud or on iTunes podcast under 31G as well. We'd like to thank our future sponsors that we don't have yet. And what else?
Yeah.
I guess that's it.
Shout out to Captain.
Yeah, what up?
Taking a nap.
Yeah, stay sick and brutal.
Later.
Planet B.
Cult and Culture is a Ruinous Media podcast, proudly sponsored by Earthquaker Devices, Heartwork Coffee, Fender, and Diodario.
Planet B.